told that Iran is part of the axis of evil, but the real evil is kept well away from the rest of the world. The beatings and torture of its young. 5 months ago, Zahra Kazemi, a Canadian journalist, was beaten to death for reporting this story. I'm a Canadian reporter too, and I'm going undercover to bring back the story Zahra Kazemi died trying to tell. Iran is a country violent too. It's a harsh capitalist. It's also a young country. 70% of the mullahs. These students are the children of the Islamic Revolution, but now they want religion out of their lives. They want change, but the price of change is their own blood. In June, Islamic vigilantes controlled by the mullahs attacked these dormitories at a university in Tehran. They smashed their way in, locked the exits, and attacked 80 students while they slept. They used machetes, metal pipes, chains, and butcher knives. It was 18 hours before anyone could escape. No one knows exactly how many died here. Zahra Kazemi had come to Iran to report on all of this. She knew the ropes. She had an official press pass. But by daring to talk to the students, she was risking her own life.
She was a very concerned mother. She was a very passionate woman. You know, she had a great human touch. She was really dedicated. She was really concerned, and that's who she was. She wanted to be as close to the truth as possible, and she believed people have the right to information. She wanted to give her that.
Kazemi's story was the crushing of the student movement. 4,000 arrested. Violent punishment is the mark of this regime. For 20 years, adulterers have been publicly stoned to death. Last year, the mullahs announced a suspension, but sources inside Iran say they continue behind closed doors. These victims are wrapped in white shrouds, then half buried so they can't move. Thieves like this criminal have their hands chopped off by machines like this. It isn't always very efficient. A man is having his eye removed. The charge says he failed to fulfill his Islamic duty by giving in to his desire. He looked at something deemed immoral. We don't know what. Recent pictures of extreme punishment are still being smuggled out, like these crane hangings last year of alleged rapists, and this woman accused of buying drugs. This is the body of a 27-year-old man, apparently tortured to death by the Iranian authorities over 3 days, for the crime of converting from Islam to the ancient Persian creed of Zoroastrianism. His family had these pictures taken at the mortuary. I showed them to Dr. Rob Chapman, a forensic pathologist.
And that mark there is a mark there which suggests forceful application, tying the wrists together, possibly hanging the body from them. There may have been a blunt impact of some sort.
So he could have been beaten?
Could have been beaten, yes. There's a very well demarcated mark on the arm, and that might be some form of electrical mark, the burn type mark.
Electric shock treatment?
Possibly, yes.
Do you think this man could have suffered before he died?
Yeah. I think it's likely he did, in fact, given the nature of what we can see, the ligature marks and the other marks on his body.
Thousands of young Iranians are in exile here in the West. They support the students in Iran. But who are the students, and how do I make contact? At this demo outside the Iranian embassy in London, there's real anger. How can Britain do business with a regime of torturers? A passionate young man is leading the chants. He claims to be a senior member of the independent student movement. But amongst these exiles, you have to be careful. Some could be spies for the regime. Iman Samizadeh says he was smuggled out of the country 2 years ago after he was tortured in prison. I spend weeks checking Iman out with exiles I trust. He tells me his flat has been attacked, and I know that exiles have been murdered by agents of the regime. On his website, Iman says his movement is fighting for freedom of speech, true democracy, and an end to the Islamic State.
I'm looking for free Iran without a religion, without any religion. The people, they can have a religion as a private thing, but in the political way, we're looking for a free country.
Iman shows me the two very different faces of Iran. President Khatami, the smiling reformer. He's elected, but he can be vetoed by this man. Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader. No one elects him, but he controls the prisons, courts, and security forces. You can vote, but only if the candidates are okayed by the mullahs. You can write, but only if it's approved by the mullahs. The students want the mullahs out.
They want basic human rights. They want freedom.
Iman was an electronics whiz kid at Tehran University before he and his friends fell foul of the Islamic Republic. So why was he arrested?
He showed a bloody t-shirt of a student. They put him in prison for 15 years.
So who's this?
This is Amir Abbas Fakhrover, my friend. I think he's the best person to become Iran's student leader.
Amir Fakhrover is serving 8 years in prison for student activism, arguing for democracy in Iran. To the students, he's both a leader and hero. This video of Fakhrover and his mother was filmed secretly just before he went to prison this year. His mother is upset, but his mind is made up.
I've chosen the path of my struggle. I am moving ahead resolutely, and I don't want you to sigh. I don't want to see a tear, and I don't want you to have that sad face. I've told you many times that I want you, at that moment they're hanging me, to stand proudly and say, I am proud of my son.
2 days later, Fakhrover was taken to Khazar prison in Tehran, where he's been regularly beaten and tortured. But they haven't silenced him. In February, he smuggled a letter out from prison, asking all Iranians to boycott elections that March. Elections, he claimed, were a sham.
Our goal is to reveal the unmasked face of the Islamic Republic, and for the whole world to see the level of its unpopularity amongst Iranians. We have borne the burden of endless tortures. We actually witnessed the executions of our friends. Others have plunged to their death and been thrown off dormitory buildings. Some have been in solitary confinement for years at the hands of the regime. We have faced these perils without fear. In return, we expect nothing, just that our people do not lose hope.
Fakhrover's appeal matched the popular mood. In elections in Tehran, turnout was only 12%. If I had any doubts about Iman, what happens on my next visit is astonishing. Somehow Amir Fakhrivar has managed to get access to a phone line in his prison. Unbelievably, in a North London flat, I hear the voice of Fakhrivar.
I'm still suffering from the after effects of my hunger strike. It's more the psychological pressure. We're fighting to keep our morale up. I was transferred to the common criminal prison, and I was there for 3 months. 3 times they attempted to kill me. They beat me up very savagely.
If I actually manage to get into Iran, Iman says he can arrange for Fakhrivar's activists to secretly meet me. But it's extremely risky.
The Iranian government, I can say they are killers, and they are really dangerous.
Zahra Kazemi was beaten and tortured for 77 hours before she died. Do you know the people who were responsible for killing Zahra Kazemi?
No, but we know she was killed by the security police.
I've been told that if I want to get into Iran, I have to go to Turkey, the first port of call for Iranians who've been smuggled out across the border. At a tobacco cafe, I meet Behzad Yagmayan. He was writing a book about the students and left Iran when he was warned he was a wanted man. He tells me how desperate some young Iranians are to leave the country. Some don't survive.
There have been many Iranians who tried to cross the mountains in wintertime and they froze to death. In springtime, when the snow melted, they found their dead bodies.
Behzad says what young Iranians really want are all the normal things we take for granted. All the things the mullahs forbid.
They listen to the same music kids in New York City listen to. And they aspire to wear the same clothes that they do. And that they actually do. Under their gown, the women do. They want to be able to go out freely, to meet their friends, to breathe freely, like free and normal human beings.
And then I hear of another exile here who tells the same story and has secretly shot film to back it up. Layla was an actress in Tehran, married to a student leader. Before she left Iran, she risked her life to film one critical day in July as students were gathering to protest. Close to the students' park in Tehran, police gather, ready to quash potential protest. Layla finds a variety of security forces, uniform and plain clothes, all together on one street corner.
Those men you see in completely green clothes are officers of the law enforcement forces. Then there are the Revolutionary Guards, and the rest are plainclothes agents. Iranian people can recognize them from their looks as agents of the regime.
Darkness falls. These black shirts are called basijis. They are hardline vigilantes.
Most of them are bearded, and they were all over the place. So if anything happened, they could put the protesters down. The guards were riding on the pavement and beating up people with batons.
Layla hears one girl call a basiji a dirty bearded man. He comes back with his mates to drag her off.
I think that woman was very brave. My relatives kept reminding me of what happened to Mrs. Kazemi, that she was so easily murdered in Iran.
And what about me trying to get into the country?
If I was a foreigner entering a country like Iran in such circumstances, I would not take up this assignment.
But I'm not giving up now. I I get my big break. I found one of the few group tours still getting into Iran. It's setting off from Slovenia in 4 days' time. To get on the trip, I told the Iranian consulate in nearby Zagreb I'm an archaeologist, not a journalist. But they could trace me on the internet. Thank God the computer wasn't working.
Okay, my visa. Looks like I really will be able to go to Iran. Anyways, better get going because there's an Iranian official outside.
I've prepared myself as much as I can up to this point. Now, there's no turning back. I'm about to go undercover into one of the most repressive states on Earth, following in the footsteps of a fellow Canadian who's been brutally murdered. I'm finally on my way to Iran. I'm after the story Zahra Kazemi died trying to tell. The underground student movement that's taking on the mullahs. If it's dangerous for me, it could be fatal for my contacts. The regime will arrest and torture the students who talk to anyone from the outside world. But people in the movement are waiting to help me if I can make it over the border.
We are not too far from the Iranian border, which is kind of exciting. Mind you, there is no guarantee that the Iranian authorities are going to let me into the country because, you know, they have a very good security apparatus in place.
I couldn't film the border, but under the cover of this coach tour, I've made it into Iran. We know more journalists are in jail here than any other country in the Middle East. A BBC crew filming undercover lasted just 5 days before they were arrested. And of course, Zahra Kazemi, a Canadian-Iranian, lost more than her film. She lost her life. The organizers of the coach trip have no idea I'm a journalist. They know me only as an archaeologist.
Chocolates for the desert, you like this?
I'm with a friend who'll back me up getting pictures. I'm on a low-budget overland trip, but we still have an official minder.
You know your stuff, don't you?
This is one of the few pictures I'll get of Behrang Tafreshi. It's his job to keep tabs on all of us. Only 100 kilometers into our 6,000-kilometer tour, and I get my first lesson in how the Iranian state controls all movement around the country.
Keep having to stop because there's been a system of new police checks apparently in the last 2 months. The police have increased their use of roadblocks, so we're having to stop like every half an hour.
They control the roads by checking the names of every person in every vehicle. All the members of our group tour are accounted for. Just filming these guys could get me in trouble. Filming students is going to be a bigger problem. Iran is a police state. You can never forget who's really in control here of people's minds, people's heads. Hotels are watched, phone calls monitored, so I have to slip out at night and find an internet cafe without being followed. I've been warned. If I miss my curfew, the hotel receptionist will report me to the police. Other journalists were caught when their emails were tapped. So I've made up a code that any eavesdropper would find hard to crack. Risking a walkabout, I bumped into this guy who I'll call Ali. We met in the market earlier. He's a student, but he's not politically active.
What do you think of the student leaders like Mr. Fakhavar?
They're big. They're big personality men. They're useful for our country, and we should respect them.
Do you think the students were right in demonstrating?
Of course they were right.
He invites me to his home to meet his friends. My first chance to meet some young Iranians.
That's great. Yeah.
But I didn't count on my Iranian minder, who took down this man's telephone number when he came looking for me earlier.
If Mr. Tafreshi called us, what should I say?
Tell him that we're drinking tea.
Okay.
He is suspicious
to me, that's the only problem.
It's not a problem that you're late, you're coming.
No, it's none of his business.
Okay. I'm worried that he make trouble for you.
His friends aren't activists either, but they're still afraid of the regime. It's the first time they've had a conversation with a foreigner. What they want seems so normal.
We lack freedom in some areas. One of the limits is, whenever we go out with our girlfriends, we have to give explanations to 100 people, including the authorities.
It's late. I have to get back. My Iranian minder, Behrang, will be waiting for me. Now that I know he's checking up on me, I keep my eye on him, the man in the white shirt. We're visiting our first major site, the birthplace of the Ayatollah Khomeini, founder of the Islamic Republic. I just had this irate guard who started yelling at me for no reason, and it actually got me quite scared. Coming, I'll be right there. I'm waiting to meet the dissidents, but my tour is getting in the way. We're now in Isfahan. I'm playing the tourist as well as I can. My cover means I should study with care the Islamic architecture of this showcase city. But I'm worrying about a meeting tonight. But I killed that little sucker yesterday. The reason I'm sitting in the bathroom is that I have a funny feeling that my bedroom is bugged here in this hotel room. I've just received word that a writer and critic of the regime has agreed to meet me at a secret location here in Isfahan. He's taking a very big risk in coming here because at his home in Tehran, all his movements and communications are monitored. So hopefully, he's not going to be followed on the 8-hour train journey from Tehran to Isfahan. I wait until night falls to leave my hotel. I want to shake off anyone trailing me, like Behrang, who's been asking awkward questions about my occasional disappearances. I head for an address a few streets away, another cheap hotel. The man I'm sneaking off to meet is a friend of Amir Fakhravar, the student leader sentenced to 8 years in prison. If this man is caught meeting me, he'll be arrested and possibly tortured. I can't show his face. We'll call him Sohrab.
I've been arrested several times. I'm not worried anymore. I know living in Iran itself is dangerous. To tell the truth, we don't live as such here. We just pretend we live here. Even the ordinary people who are not political and go about their daily business are not really living. The security forces are watching through the telephones, the email, the street, at home, at work, correspondence. They are everywhere. When I was in prison, one of the guards said to me, "Wherever you go, we will know what you are doing, and we are watching you." The police are fascists. Nothing can happen internally. Everything is suppressed. Every demonstration, every opposition is severely suppressed.
This secretly shot film of a teachers' demonstration for higher wages was smuggled out to us last November. It started peacefully. It became a protest against the regime.
Our dream country is one where human rights are respected, where people are not sent to prison and tortured for their ideas, for their writing, for their work. That is our dream country.
Sohrab tells me we, in the West, have to listen to ordinary Iranians. He says our politicians are more interested in trade contracts with Iran than in human rights.
Unfortunately, a degree of what this leadership is doing is because of the indifference of the West. The Europeans have forgotten human rights for the sake of the $1 million deals they have signed with Iran, and this is a cause for great shame.
I rush back to my hotel before anyone notices I've gone. Or so I thought. I'm a foreigner without permission to be roaming around on her own. If I do get stopped, I can't afford to have anything on me that could even remotely endanger the people that I'm meeting in secret. The next morning, I learned the hotel receptionist snitched on me, and my minder knows, once again, I went out at night without permission. Today I work hard on my cover as an enthusiastic archaeologist. I'm worried. A contact rang my hotel and was put through to Beirang, my minder. He said nothing to me about it. In Persepolis, wearing a blue shirt, his silence unsettles me. This whole trip has been really difficult. All my phone calls are monitored, my movements are monitored, and a tour guide is sticking to me like glue. So it's been really tough, really tough. Evening approaches, and it's another snatched visit to an internet cafe. I'm told to break away from my tour in Shiraz if I can. It's another 300 kilometers on the road in our tour of the Islamic Republic. I slip off for the day while the others do more sightseeing. I've got to stick to my plan.
Some places they mention it as a Allah.
But I know my Iranian guide must be wondering why an archaeologist would rather watch TV. He doesn't know what my real plan is for the afternoon. This is Shiraz, where Zahra Kazemi was born. I want to see for myself what so outraged Kazemi's family. A guard has been told to help me. I don't want to see the altar. I want to see something else, even if I can't film it. Zahra Kazemi's grave. Kazemi's son wants his mother's body sent back to Canada to be examined for evidence of her treatment in prison. But the Iranian authorities refuse. I couldn't get into the locked graveyard where they buried her. Even in death, Kazemi is being manipulated by the regime. I find another internet cafe, and the news is grim. An American-Iranian academic visiting from Berkeley to observe the student movement, Dariush Zahedi, was being held in Evin prison in Tehran in solitary confinement. This really pumps up my paranoia. I know I've been followed a couple of times so far. In Shiraz, I saw the same man in 3 locations in less than an hour, so I don't think that was a coincidence. I think I was definitely being followed. Now we're entering the capital, and hooking up with students is going to be even tougher. Tehran looks like any modern city, except the security forces here are thick on the ground. I know the secret police are everywhere, plain clothes and uniform. I can't just film wherever I want. Tourists are thin on the ground here. Through my coded emails, I'm told to rendezvous with someone at the Museum of Contemporary Art. I'm meeting a man called Arjang. He's supposed to be fixing a meeting with someone important in the student movement. So our contact, are we going to get a chance to see him today? Arjang's been a political activist since the 70s, and now he's helping the students to take on the mullahs. He sets up a meeting for later. I have to get back to my group tour. I was supposed to have a free day in Tehran, but my suspicious Iranian minder, today in an orange shirt, has filled up all my time with outings. But in a park, I snatch a few minutes with a student called Kianush. He's been arrested 4 times. The first, when he wrote an internet article criticizing the government's treatment of the students. He was 17.
When you're first arrested, you're put in solitary for months. In these solitary cells, which are 1 meter by 2 meters, one is left alone for months, and there they force you to make false confessions.
Isn't it student activists that are disappearing every day in Iran?
Yes, this sort of thing happens through the unofficial gangs. They are supported politically and financially, and they are able to easily abduct people who are taking part in protests and demonstrations and take them to secret hideouts.
Like many students, Kianush doesn't want an Iraq-style invasion.
The free world, including America, can put pressure on the ruling clerics so that they accept holding a referendum to decide the future democratic structure of Iran. But they cannot interfere militarily. We are not after America's military intervention.
Kianush reminds me, he's like any other 21-year-old. What sort of music do you listen to?
I love Jennifer Lopez. Pop and rock and roll music are really popular in Iran. The Iranian youth really like this sort of thing.
All the students I've met in the pro-democracy movement want non-violent change. They're not crazy revolutionaries. All they're asking for is the freedom to live the way they want. Back on my official tour, we're being shown around the palace of Iran's deposed Shah. He was kicked out because of this opulent lifestyle. But not far away in the golden ghetto of Ilahiye, behind these gates and fences, I glimpse the wealth of the current ruling elite, the equally worldly mullahs. In an oil and gas-rich country, not much seems to have changed. I'm meeting Arjang again. It's brave of him to insist that I show his face, but for safety's sake, we're going to do the next interview in the car, and it will be on the phone. Whoa! When the voice comes on the line, I realize I've heard it before. It's Amir Fakhravar, calling from prison. He's again got access to a telephone line. Okay, I'll pass you back to Arjang. Okay. Take care. Nice talking to you. For the sake of speed, Arjang acts as my interpreter. How many students are currently locked up in prison?
He says that there are thousands of students all over Iran that have been put in jail or they have been expelled from university. The majority of them, their family don't even dare to tell their names.
Since the crackdown, how many students have been murdered and how many are still unaccounted for?
This is something that everybody knows, that the students disappear and they've been killed.
Suddenly, Arjang's aware a policeman is looking straight at us.
There are many people, and he knows he has seen 19 people with his own eyes, but the government didn't let the families to have ceremony for them, and plus they had to pay for the bullets in their bodies.
The killings are still going on a daily basis?
He says yes, it's on daily basis, and some of it is done by the security people in the regime and some with the fans of the regime that they want to go to heaven as soon as possible.
Is he not afraid that he will not leave prison alive?
میگه نمی‌ترسی از زندان رو زنده ازش نذارنت بیای بیرون؟
It's the last I'll hear from Amir Fakhravar, the student sentenced to 8 years in prison for speaking about democracy in Iran. Arjang drives me to a secret location in the outskirts of Tehran. He wants to tell me what he's heard about the death of Zahra Kazemi.
She expected them to be easy with her, but there is a procedure that they do for everybody, like insulting and pushing you around and making you stand up for a few hours. We are used to this sort of procedure, but Zahra Kazemi was not, and she fought them back. She criticized them, she shouted. They cannot endure critics, and she fought them back strongly. And when they wanted to do something immoral with her.
What exactly were they trying to do to her?
Not only me, but it's spread all over the country that they really wanted to abuse her sexually.
Is this common practice in Iranian prisons?
Yes. For the ladies it is, yes.
After 26 days in Iran, my trip, official and unofficial, is almost over. The students are having my interview tapes smuggled over the mountains into Turkey, where I'll pick them up. Good job, because I'm thoroughly searched on the way out, and all my tourist tapes checked. I'm destroying any last evidence linking me to the students. They've been incredibly brave, but I still need hard evidence about the fate of Zahra Kazemi. Clues I'm going to pursue outside Iran. I've crossed the border, and I'm out of Iran. From the students, I've got a sense of a real political movement in the making. But I still don't know what exactly happened to Zahra Kazemi. The students say the mullahs get away with murder because they have their own secret system of justice. But how do they know? I've been put on to an exiled Iranian in Germany, Parastu Forouar. It was the murder of her parents 5 years ago which triggered the first round of popular street demonstrations.
This is the last photo of your parents?
Yes, that's the last photo of my parents.
Parastu's parents were two of the leading opposition politicians in Iran.
How were your parents killed?
My parents were stabbed with knife. My mother 24 times and my father 11 times.
It was very brutal.
Yes, it was very brutal.
And I mean, what was their crime?
They were Democrats. They were for separation of state and religion. And it's a crime in Iran.
100,000 people came onto the streets at the funeral of Parastu's parents. It was a spark for the pro-democracy movement, and 7 months later, the student protests. The mullahs were rattled. They had to find a scapegoat for the Forouar's brutal murder. 2 men were eventually jailed. They said they were taking orders from the intelligence ministry.
Everybody knew that it was the government, the intelligence service, who was behind the killings. But it was the first time that the intelligence service said it.
But was this the beginning of a pattern of extrajudicial killings and disappearing people? I'm still in Germany, in search of more evidence. I've been given the name of a man who was the victim of vigilante justice. He was left for dead. Miran Mir Abdolbagi ran the youth wing of the unofficial party founded by Parastu's parents. For that, he was taken blindfolded by security forces to a secret detention center. No official trial, he just disappeared.
I was in solitary confinement for 5.5 months. I was severely tortured. The types of torture they used on me included being suspended from the ceiling and receiving flogging with electric cables, alternating between 10, 5, 20, up to 75 times. The soles of my feet would be flogged. After receiving each lash, they would draw the head of cable against my sole and I could feel the pain up to my bones.
And then Mehran tells me about a technique called Coca-Cola rape.
It was the insertion of the glass bottle. It happened to me twice.
The rape wasn't in Evin, Kazar, or any of the other notorious official prisons. It was in one of the secret prisons run by the hardliners. I've been told by Human Rights Watch that this is something new in Iran, people being disappeared and never seen again. But is it really organized? Through my exile contacts, I find out there's a man who's just escaped from Iran. He was warned, leave or you'll be killed. He won't allow me to say where I meet him, but I can say that he used to work for the mullahs and he's ready to spill the beans.
There are many who are kept in the unofficial prisons with names such as 59, Tawhid, and 66. There are many. Autonomous forces associated with the conservatives treat prisoners there most savagely.
Ibrahimi tells me he was the leader of an extreme fundamentalist group, Ansar-e Hizbullah, the Party of God. They're the bully boys. They burn bookstores, destroy newspaper offices. Ibrahimi says he and his group were ordered to destroy the student movement by the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, after the student demonstrations of 1999.
For example, Mr. Khamenei had ordered me to somehow silence the student movement in Iran and the independent student movement in Isfahan. We also witnessed the murder of one student, Izzat Ebrahimi Nejad, and many students were seriously wounded. A student from the Faculty of Medicine, who was ranked first, lost an eye. Many others were maimed and lost limbs. There are still those who are missing since their disappearance from 9th of July 1999. It's obvious they're dead and not being held in the prisons.
It seems that Ibrahimi changed sides after he took the rap for the attack on a politician. He says he suffered for his change of heart. 2 years in prison, 18 months in solitary confinement. It's almost 4 weeks since I got out of Iran, and I'm still looking for clues to link Zahra Kazemi's death to the mullah's secret system of justice. I finally made it to Amsterdam, and a contact who might know what really happened. I'm on my way to meet Hamid Zakari, a former Iranian intelligence officer who defected over a year ago. He's been on the run ever since, but he's agreed to meet me at a safe house here in Amsterdam. Hamid Zakari worked directly for the Supreme Leader and is now under the protection of the FBI and security forces in Europe. At the safe house, he tells me his contacts know what happened to Zahra Kazemi.
I have information from the people who are in Iran right now and who were my colleague before.
Kazemi was taken to a secret detention center with a special number.
There is a place right now, it used to be 325, and they are taking the people who are special people like Zahra Kazemi and the others.
And who actually beat Zahra Kazemi?
Jafar Nemati, he's the one who punched her, who hit her. He's the one who beat her up until she was unconscious.
He says what really drove her interrogator wild was that she took everything and wouldn't flinch.
She was not accepting what he wanted from her. That's why Jafar Nemati was upset and beat her on the head and lots of the different kind of the beating.
Kazemi was bleeding from her nose and ear. The prison guards reported to Saeed Mortazavi, Jafar Nemati's boss.
They came back and told to the Saeed Mortazavi. He was there right that time with Mr. Jafar Nemati. and told them what the doctor said. And that's the time Mr. Saeed Mortazavi make a decision to send her to another place, which everything is going to be disappeared and everything is not going to be happening under his authority.
This time, though, they killed a foreigner. So diplomatic pressure meant the mullahs had to come up with a culprit, Mohammad Reza Ahmadi. But that isn't the name produced by an independent parliamentary investigation in Iran. It came up with the same names produced by Zakhari, Prosecutor General Saeed Mortazavi, and Jafar Namati. But so far, they remain untouched. And now, just when the mullahs least wanted it, this woman, Shireen Ebadi, has just been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for her work as a human rights lawyer. She's taken on the case of Zahra Kazemi.
Unfortunately, Mrs. Zahra Kazemi's death was caused by the heedless regard for Iranian law. When there are individuals or groups who consider themselves above the law, incidents such as this will occur. In the case that we will present, in addition to asking for the punishment of the murderer, in view of the public's knowledge of what happened, I will try to ensure that there will not be another Zahra Kazemi.
Finally, at the end of this journey, I'm back in Canada, in Montreal. It's where Zahra Kazemi's son Stefan lives. He's still trying to get his mother's body back from Iran. I want to tell him that I did at least visit the shrine where she's buried.
This picture she really liked herself, actually.
Why wasn't your mother's body returned to Canada?
Well, she has been beaten, she has been tortured, she has been pushed to false declaration. To have the body sent back to Canada, it would have all the evidence of the treatment she received in prison, I mean, while she was detained.
As for his mother's alleged murderers, I asked him about Jafar Namati and Saeed Mortazavi.
The guilty is not one man. The responsible is the Iranian government. The responsible is Khamenei. The last email I got was talking about the demonstration of the student. She mentioned that it's nighttime. That it's of a great interest for her. That's all she said. My mother's dead, but there is other journalists and there is other people that get us such a treatment. I don't want the death of my mother to be in vain.
As this program was being completed, the question of who killed Zahra Kazemi is still in dispute.
We never drink beer or...
Arjang, our contact in Tehran, has been arrested. He's being held without charge. Ahmad Batabi, the man with the bloody t-shirt, disappeared after speaking to a UN human rights monitor. We're told he's been tortured in a secret detention center by Saeed Mortazavi, the man implicated in the beating of Zahra Kazemi. The student leader, Amir Fakhravar, has been transferred to the toughest wing in Khazar prison, where he is also being tortured.
Tell us what you think about this or any other programme on any TV channel by logging on to channel4.com/thinktv.